Robb!
I'll kill them all.
We have to get the girls back. And then we will kill them all.
What's the deal, my people? You know it is Don Tony Teflon, and I'm back at you another one. And this one is, throughout the years, I have been known for one main thing, and that is to come up with original theories. But it is my pleasure and honor to present you for the first time ever on Teflon TV, a theory that I did not come up with myself. No, this theory is from one of my best friends ever from the YouTube community. My first ever partner in this YouTube business, and that is BarTube. And she has graciously said that I can be allowed to explain this beautiful theory that she came up with all these years ago that I believe holds water today, and I believe is the truth. I always believed in this theory, but I'm going to put it to you. And she has graciously given me the link to her video. So even though I'm going to break down this theory, I'm not going to say everything that she said in her video, so that you can, if you're a Teflon TV subscriber, go back and watch her full version of this video. But before we do that, if you can, please subscribe, hit that thumbs up, so you can be notified every time I drop a new Game of Thrones video. And this theory is Robb Stark, the true bastard of Winterfell. In this theory, we will explore why Robb Stark is not the son of Ned and Catelyn Stark, but instead the son of Catelyn, Tully, and Brandon Stark. First, I'm going to give you the timeline on how I believe all this happened, and then I'm going to go step by step through the timeline and explain exactly why this is plausible and why I believe that this 100% is the truth, that Robb Stark is truly a bastard. Now, in 276 or 277 AC, it's not known the exact year, but it was when Catelyn was 12 years old. This is when she was betrothed to Brandon Stark, the heir of Winterfell. Now, the date of Catelyn's wedding was announced some years later, and that was in 282. This is when Peter Baelish challenges Brandon to a duel for the hand of Catelyn Stark. Brandon beats him up pretty bad and then tries to get him to yield several times. Peter refuses to do this, and then he has no choice but to injure him bad enough so that he cannot continue. Then he leaves so he can go and join his father, who's coming down for the wedding. But before he does, he tells Catelyn that he will be back. He promises her that he will be back so they can be wed. So after he links up with his people, this is when he receives word that Rhaegar Targaryen then abducted his sister Lyanna. And this is when he leaves with his squires to go to King's Landing to confront Rhaegar Targaryen. When he arrives to King's Landing, he starts screaming, "Rhaegar, come out and fight me." This is when Rhaegar's father, the Mad King, grabs him up, says that he's committed treason for plotting the murder of his son, then asks for his father to come down. Lord Rickard Stark gets there, they grab him up, they put a choking device around Brandon's neck and a sword on the floor. They set his father on fire, and while he's trying to reach for the sword so he could free himself and then free his father, he winds up strangling himself to death. This causes Robert's rebellion, and then Ned has to lock down the help of the Tullys by marrying Catelyn, his brother's old betrothed. And this is when people believe that Robb Stark was conceived. Now that we have the timeline from the books that all this happened, let's go back through the timeline and I will tell you exactly when Robb truly was conceived and how everything fits together. Now, while he was spending time in Riverrun and he was spending it with his soon-to-be wife, this is when I believe at this particular time when the wedding was announced that he had sex with Catelyn, and this is when Robb was truly conceived. Now, you may say that why would he do this? Why would he spoil his virgin before the wedding. Why would he do something like that? Well, I'm going to give you proof right now that Brandon did not care about taking a woman's virginity. Now, when Brandon was young, he was fostered in Barrowtown by William Dustin, and we get this story from Lady Dustin about the time he spent there. Brandon was never shy about taking what he wanted. I am old now, a dried up thing, too long a widow, but I still remember the look of my maiden's blood on his cock the night he claimed me. I think Brandon liked the sight as well. A bloody sword is a beautiful thing, yes. It hurt, but it was a sweet pain. So we see right here that Brandon had no problem about deflowering women. He did not care. He didn't have to be married to do anything with them. If he wanted it, he wasn't afraid to take it. That's what she said, and he did take it. She wanted him to, and he did. That's the way this man gets down. Let me give you another example about this man and his traits of doing this. Let's go back 1 year before he was supposed to marry Catelyn. What happened then? That was the tourney of Harrenhal. And during this tourney, we see him try to go up to Ashara Dane and try to get her to dance with his shy brother Ned Stark. But then we hear something from Sir Barristan Selmy that kind of sheds a little bit more light on Brandon Stark at the tournament. No good could have come from telling her his feelings. No good came from silence either. If I had unhorsed Rhaegar and crowned Ashara, queen of love and beauty, might she have looked to me instead of Stark? Now we can see right now that Sir Barristan Selmy got a little something going on for Ashara Dane, but he feels that she does not feel the same way for him. And why? Because she was looking at Stark, right? She had something for Stark. Who is this Stark that she's talking about? Now, people want to say that it's Ned Stark, but that cannot be the case because Ned wasn't even able to ask her to dance. He was so shy that he had to have his big brother, Brandon, go up to her and ask her for a dance. Now we got to remember that this tournament took place at 281 AC. Sir Barristan was born in 236 AC, making him 45 years old when this happened, right? Ashara Dane was born in 260 AC, making her 21 while this was going on. Brandon Stark was 19 years old. So of course she's going to be more attracted to the person that's closest to her age, and that would be Brandon, not old man Barristan. But he thought that maybe if he was able to show her how good of a fighter he was and he could crown her love and beauty, that she would probably not look at his age. That was his ploy. But the fact that he wasn't able to win the tournament, we see that he did not have that, so she was not into him. She was into Stark, the one closest to her age, Brandon, not Ned. And we have another quote from Sir Barristan Selmy about Ashara, and it goes a little something like this. But Ashara's daughter had been stillborn, and his fair lady had thrown herself from a tower soon after, mad with grief for the child she had lost, or perhaps for the man that had dishonored her at Harrenhal as well. Now, who the father of this stillborn baby was, it is unknown. We have no idea who this was, but let's just say that this was Ned Stark who had sex with her out of wedlock. What do we know about Ned Stark? The only thing we do know about him is he's the most honorable man in Westeros. He's not having sex with any woman outside of wedlock. That's what we know. But we do know a Stark that would have sex with a woman out of wedlock, and that is without a doubt Brandon Stark. So it seems that we have a pattern here that we can basically take to the bank, that Brandon Stark would have no problem having sex with a woman out of wedlock. He's done it before, so therefore we could safely assume that it's a good possibility that he had sex with Catelyn before they got married. As Lady Dustin said, Brandon was never shy about taking what he wanted. At this tournament we seen, Ned Stark was shy. So I believe that Brandon took what he wanted from Ashara Dane and also from Catelyn Tully. Because you have to ask yourself, why would George R.R. Martin put these two examples of this man? Why would he say this in this book at this particular time? Why? What sense does that make? And we most also got to remember, Catelyn is infatuated with Brandon. She thanked her father to make this wedding happen. She was in love with him. So she would have no problem doing something with him out of wedlock because she was marrying him anyway. He told her, I'm coming back to marry you. They were betrothed for years. So this was going down. So it would be no slight on her. Because what's the worst thing that could happen to her in this situation? She could get pregnant, but she's getting pregnant by the man she's marrying. So it makes no difference. And it probably would be a blessing to her if she was able to give this man a son. And this is exactly what happened. She has sex with Brandon and she gets pregnant. But he dies before they can get married. So what does that mean? That means if this child is born out of wedlock, that this dishonors her family and herself, right? That is why when she is told that she has to marry Ned instead, she jumps at the chance of doing it. Remember, she was in love with Brandon. He just died. For years she thought she was going to marry this man, but she still marries his brother with no reluctance at all. She jumps right into this marriage. Why does she do this? Because she knows she's pregnant at this time and she needs to get married. Now, while watching Robb in Game of Thrones chapter 10, Catelyn, she says this: "Let him grow taller," she asked the gods. "Let him know 16 and 20 and 50. Let him grow as tall as his father and hold his own son in his arms. Please, please, please." As she watched him, this tall young man with the new beard and the dire wolf prowling at his heels. Now we're going to unpack this whole statement right now. We're going to go line by line. The first thing that she points out is the height of her son. And she seems to stress this very much. Let him grow taller, she asked the gods. Let him grow as tall as his father. As she watched him, this tall young man. So she's talking about her son's height. Now, if the father at this particular time was Ned Stark, that would mean that Ned Stark would have to be a tall man. But Ned Stark is not a tall man. Not at all. We have a quote from Catelyn that clearly points this out. She remembered her own childish disappointment the first time she laid eyes on Eddard Stark. She had pictured him as a younger version of his brother Brandon, but that was wrong. Ned was shorter and plainer of face and so somber. So she was in this big fantasy, this whole princess and the prince fantasy with his brother Brandon, who was tall and dashing and handsome. But she got snapped into reality when she met Ned, who she thought would look like his older brother, but he wasn't. And one thing that she points out clearly what he was is how much shorter Ned was than his brother, right? So why would she want her son, if it was Ned, to be short? But there was a tall person, and she says, let him grow as tall as his father. Who is the tall person that we know that she knows? That is Brandon Stark. Now she also brings up 3 ages that seem random, but they are not. And they are 16, 20, and 50. So what's their significance? 16. 16 was the age that Brandon was when she met him when she was 14 and she fell in love with him. 20. 20 was the age that Brandon Stark died. And 50 was the age that we believe that Rickard Stark died. Also, if Robb were to die at 16, this would be 3 generations of Starks that died prematurely. Robb at 16, Brandon at 20, and Rickard at 50. And since Robb was born in 283 AC and died in 299, that makes him 16 years old when he does pass away. Also, she says, let him hold his own son in his arms. That is something that Brandon never got the chance to do. He was not able to hold his own son in his arms. That's why it would be special to her if Robb was actually able to do this. Now, further proof that Catelyn was already pregnant when she married Ned comes from Catelyn's own mouth. We go check Storm of Swords, Catelyn 7, and we hear her say this about her wedding night. When Lord Dustin had beheld her naked, he told Ned that her breasts were enough to make him wish he'd never been weaned. Now, being weaned means to cease giving milk to a child, right? So he wishes that he was never stopped giving milk, that he wanted to suckle on this woman's breast, right? So we have two folds here. One, that means something about a baby, right? He's talking about a baby. Two, Catelyn's breast must be so big that makes her look like she can be nursing. In no place in these books or any description you can find a Catelyn Tully will it say that she's big-breasted at all. Not at all. Why would she be big-breasted at this time? Well, if she was pregnant, that would solve that mystery. More proof that Robb is not Ned Stark's son and is the son of Brandon Stark comes from Catelyn herself when she says this. She was impressed despite herself. He looks like a Tully, she thought, yet he's still his father's son, and Ned taught him well. So when we listen to this, you have to ask yourself, why would she say, and Ned taught him well, when she was just talking about his father? She says, he looks like a Tully, she thought, yet he's still his father's son, and Ned taught him well. So that means she's talking about three different people. He looks like a Tully, she thought, Catelyn, yet he's still his father's son, Brandon, and Ned taught him well. Ned Stark. Three different people. Because if that was the case and she was talking about Ned the whole time, the sentence should have been phrased differently. It should have said something like this. He's still his father's son. He taught him well. Or he's still his father's son and he taught him well. The fact that it says and Ned taught him well makes me believe that the person that she was talking about before when she said his father's son is not the same person as Ned. Therefore, I believe that that person has no choice but to be Brandon. Now, in Game of Thrones chapter Catelyn 10, we also get some more proof that this is not Ned's child from Catelyn herself when she says, she had brought him forth in blood and pain, not knowing whether Ned would ever see him, her son. He had been so small. Now, if she's talking about Ned's son and not knowing if Ned would ever see his son, why did she specifically say her son? Why is that stressed, her son? How come she does not say his son or their son? You don't see anything like that. It says specifically her son. Which leads me to believe that it's only her son because his father had already passed away. And his father was not Ned Stark, but his father was Brandon Stark. Now there is so much more to this theory. So what I will do is provide all of my Patreons with an unlisted link to Bar Deporto's video so you can listen to it yourself and see everything she has to say. Also, I will do a live stream where we go through the whole thing later on this week. So make sure you subscribe and click that bell so you can be notified when that live stream goes down. And until next time, you know who it is. Peace and stay sexy.